And we're live.
Hey everybody, here we are, Dev Talk Show, January 20th, 2021. Couple minutes late, but we're here. And and on behalf of Andy Schwam and our guest Kevin Griffin, I'm Chris Gomez. So we're back with some technical gremlins, right? A little bit of difficulties. So if you folks were looking for the show to start tonight, we got it going. So thank you, Andy, for really a Herculean task of getting this up and running. Appreciate that.
Thanks. Yeah, we
So,
scrambled a little bit at the last minute. We had some tough technical difficulties, but
no, I
we're
keep on
up.
pushing myself.
Kevin's camera looks a little fuzzy for some reason. I'm not sure what's up with that, but Kevin's so handsome that I think it makes up for it. And to tell you the truth,
Yeah.
what I did is I put a little filter on Kevin's camera to make him look less good to give Chris and I a chance. You know.
Is that what it is?
You
Yeah, yeah.
you don't want to see me at 1080p, right?
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks to everybody for being here. We've already got some hellos from Chops and Contrived EX, and thanks for being here tonight. So the real Japan is here. Great to see you, and of course our guest Kevin Griffin. So
Hey.
Kevin, you have the honor of being our first two-time guest. Good to see you. How's it going?
Yes. Oh, awesome.
Good, good.
Yep.
Excited for 2021?
Yeah. I mean, it's inauguration day, so just gonna only get better, right?
Yeah, it's this time of year, every 4 years, it's always a new beginning, right? So
Yeah, exactly.
that's what we're looking forward to. And um, you, Kevin, speaking of new beginnings, well, this is the worst uh, segue ever, but I'll connect it. You are beginning to promote a brand new course. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I actually it helped during COVID. I had ample free time, so I started picking up a couple projects, and one of them is my new course on SignalR. So it's called SignalR Mastery. And Chris, well, we've both been talking about SignalR forever,
Yeah.
like from the early days back in 2013 when it first came out. And I did a course on SignalR back in 2013 for I call it legacy SignalR because you shouldn't be using it anymore.
Okay.
But that's all outdated. And I'm like, it's about time I do a new course. And everything's changed so much. I'm not tied to the contractual obligations of that old course. So I decided it was time to put out something new because I just love the topic.
Yeah.
And I use
Yeah.
it on so many projects that I needed to write something new about it.
Yeah, you're right. I think a lot of people know me as the SignalR guy in Philly for some time, where it was just when the technology landed, what David Fowler and Damian Edwards had done is like they finally brought together a simple way to enable real-time duplex kind of communication that back
Yeah.
then like you could sort of start to roll it yourself, but it was like, oh, what a mess. There's so much to worry about, all this stuff in the middle. And they just made it all work.
It's amazing. I remember vividly. It was 2011, I think. I went to it was Mix,
Yep.
the last Mix out in Las Vegas, and I wish they would bring Mix back because Mix was an amazing show. It was an amazing Microsoft show because it wasn't Microsoft tech centric. It was
Right.
just standards moving forward. And I
Yep.
went into a talk where it was when I was first introduced to WebSockets. And this is when WebSockets was not in any browser. Like if you wanted to use WebSockets, you had to be on like a Chrome or Firefox nightly. And that was the only time it worked. And I sat in this talk, and this guy, I don't remember who it was, but he went over WebSockets for like 40 minutes. And then at the end, he went, but you can't use it
Yeah.
because it's not in any browser. But let me show you the workaround if you want to start working with this today. And he basically showed it was a proxy in the browser that went through a Flash plugin.
Okay.
And the Flash plugin would create the WebSocket
Yeah.
and would talk back to the server. So you could write all your server code, and then you would have this flash plugin that acted as your socket on your behalf. And I remember sitting there going, nope.
Yeah, right.
Gotta
This
walk
is what a
out of the
mess.
talk. But then
Yeah.
we got SignalR, and it was all better. And I think SignalR was more critical back in 2013 because you didn't have across the board WebSocket support.
Yep.
It was only in a handful of browsers, and even then, if you were still on an old version of IIS, you couldn't run WebSocket. So it was very limited in who could use a WebSocket, and you didn't want to have to worry about writing your code twice or 3 times to support all these different mechanisms. So I remember when the SignalR came out and went, oh, write your code once, and we'll figure it out the rest. That's when I was sold.
Yep. I agree. And so, I don't know if we're going to have a conversation, right? Like this show is about capturing that parking lot hallway conversation. But Kevin, I don't know if you had a diagram you wanted to show us about SignalR, if we want to move forward a little bit. I want to let you kind of take over here. And if you do want to introduce it, fine.
Well, do we need to explain? I know you did a SignalR show not all that long ago.
Not too long ago, right. So it's definitely, we're here to talk about adding real-time interactivity, and that means a lot of things.
Well,
let's talk about.
I think it's always a good idea
Go ahead,
to do a real quick overview, so that people who maybe missed our previous show that we did about it a while ago, they're not caught up. So it's always good to just start, if you don't mind, Kevin, starting with a quick overview of how, maybe from the beginning, but we want to move on to some of the juicier content that I think you're here to bring us tonight.
All right.
And tell me when you're ready, and I'll bring up your screen.
These aren't the best slides, but I'll work with them. So, all right, go ahead, Andy.
Okay, so you're up now.
All right, I'm up now. So this is actually some content from the course. So the idea behind SignalR is you have websites, and they deliver this content. So if a client's out there, hold on, let me get my focus. So if a client goes to a server and says, "Hey, I want information about products currently available on the site," you get back all this HTML, and it might tell you at the current time, "Hey, this page only has 10 units," and say, "Well, that's cool." Well, what if another page or another client goes and gets the exact same page? They're going to get the exact same data because the current state of the server is there's only 10 units available. All right, awesome. Well, client A over here goes, there are 10 units. I want all 10 units. And it puts out an order for 10 units. And the inventory basically goes from 10 down to 0. Which is awesome, unless your client E over here, who thinks that there are still 10 units available for purchase, because when they loaded the site, there were 10 available. So then client E over here goes, well, I want to buy. So it puts a request back to the server saying, I don't need all 10. I'm not going to be greedy here. Let's just buy 2. Well, what happens on the server? Fails. It says, sorry, the inventory is 0. We can't serve up your request. Well, there are graceful ways to solve that problem. But what if we could just sync everything across the board so everyone knows what the current inventory is at all times? Well, client A or all the clients, they can go and they get the initial view of the server, but then they establish this connection back to the server that says, all right, well, just let us know if the state changes for any reason. So then client A goes and buys 10 units. That will change the inventory from 10 down to 0 like it did before. But now the server knows that the state has changed, and it wants to send that data out to everyone they need to know about it. So poor client E sitting over here now knows that the inventory is 0. So it doesn't have to worry about this weird use case of trying to submit an order for inventory that doesn't exist. And this is the general idea behind SignalR, is that we can create these two-way communication pipes or WebSockets between our clients and our servers. So our server now has the ability to send data down to all the clients that need to know about state changes. And this is not a new problem. This problem has been around since mid-2000s, as long as I've been building web applications. But we've solved the problem differently. We've solved the problem with just timed AJAX requests. Saying, all right, well, every 2 minutes, I'm going to go back to the server and I'm going to check for the latest state. No problem with that. There was also a mechanism called server send events, where the server could open up an event, what was it called? An event source to each individual client, and they could use that. That's been around since Netscape. There was this other thing called Forever Frame, which was IE only, and it was really cruddy. So we're not going to talk about that.
Right.
But you also, nowadays we have WebSockets, and WebSockets would solve this entire problem for us.
Yeah.
And we have to be aware that our clients nowadays aren't just going to be web applications. So I might be serving up my data to someone sitting at a desktop, like folks probably might be sitting at right now, but they also might be on a mobile phone, whether it's a mobile web app or if it's a native mobile app, or it could even be a device. So if you have IoT devices all around your home, well, they could probably receive some of these signals as well when state changes. Well, what if you could write one code base that handles all these and really reduces the wear and tear on you as a developer? And that's what SignalR is, as the grand scheme of things. And we go much deeper into the various topics of SignalR, but that's kind of the gist. Is you just want to create a two-way pipe between your clients and your server, so your server can send data down to the clients without the client having to continuously ping for new data. That's kind of the gist.
Yeah.
Like, I think where we're at today, you said something interesting earlier. You said that I'm probably going to misquote you slightly, but you said when SignalR first appeared for the .NET framework, for the ASP.NET 4 timeframe, that it solved a problem we desperately needed to solve, which was, I want this real-time communication without a page refresh. I want the client to be able to send functions. I'd like to send events to the server, and I want the server to kind of send little events to the client. But to write that code, you might write it multiple times because you got to find out, like, well, can I use a WebSocket? Can I use long polling? Can I use and SignalR just took care of that. It fell back as necessary. So like ContriveDX says, it's not just WebSockets though, right? SignalR can fail over, say, long polling, for instance. And I think really where we're at today, just like we were then, is don't worry about it. Like, we're going to take care of it. We're going to establish this real-time communication. It's part, like, I don't know what you think, Kevin, but it's like it's part RPC because it feels like I can call methods over on the server, or I can have the server call methods over on the client. But it's also part events. Like, here's some data. Hey, something just happened, And that's what I can't wait to see you show here. Is you just don't have to worry about it. You just stop thinking about it and go to work.
The underlying, if anyone wants to look up the concept, the real concept they should look at is PubSub, where you have your client subscribing to events on the server subscribing to events from the clients, and then both the client and the server can publish events as they occur. And it's not unlike with old AJAX requests. The AJAX request was one-way communication. The client would send the message to the server, and that was the server's golden opportunity to send out anything else it needed to. And now we have the opportunity where the server can say, hey, I know about a state change. I'm going to send that state change down to anyone who's connected. And if the client's listening and it's expecting that message, it can handle it. But there's really no expectation on the client to handle anything it gets from the server. It could just ignore all the messages. It only listens for the messages that it cares about. And I think and trying to manage that on your own is, don't do that.
Yeah. And we keep talking about the web because that was like the primary use case. And so SignalR is definitely a .NET technology on the server side. It's going to be a .NET application, an ASP.NET application, really ASP.NET Core application. But over on the client side, what we didn't mention yet is that the team has built clients for multiple platforms, and then there's community support. So you don't have to be in JavaScript or TypeScript. You could be a .NET app. It could be a WPF app. It could be and in a past life, we were trying to build a whiteboard. And when I say we, folks here know Jess Chadwick. He and I were trying to build a whiteboard, and we wanted a web client and a WPF client. And that's actually why we chose SignalR to do the communication, because we got for free. I know it wasn't cross-platform the way, like if you had a Xamarin client and an iOS client, which you do have for SignalR, we kind of got that for free, where we were looking on our webpage and then we were looking on our big 82-inch touchscreen. This was before Microsoft bought the company, essentially a Surface Hub. And Microsoft went and bought that company that made those. And we're like, this is so cool. I can like draw my finger here and there it is on the webpage. And we were just like overjoyed out of our minds that came in a library.
Yeah,
we didn't invent any of that tech.
In the chat, I see the Real Japan says they used it in Xamarin and IoT, which is kind of cool. Like there's a lot of different ways. And then Mike's asking the question, and I think Chris touched upon this, but I'll just say Mike's asking, does the server side need to be ASP.NET? And I think the answer is yes, right? Is that?
Yeah.
Your servers
for that.
I think for purposes of today's talk, we're not talking about ASP.NET .NET Framework. We're talking about ASP.NET Core, which runs on .NET 5, which is based on .NET Core, right? Like this is the new world that we want to focus on.
We allowed to say core, .NET Core anymore? Or is that like, we're not supposed to say that? I find myself saying it.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like the product, I believe that the web product is still called ASP.NET Core, even in .NET 5.
ASP.NET is, right?
I got that confirmed. I asked Hanselman.
Yeah.
So I needed a confirmation on verbiage because I was doing a course.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to have to go change my course because the verbiage changed.
Yeah. And look, dropping the core moniker is creating a whole new set of confusion.
Yeah.
One way to think of .NET 5, Andy, I don't have a problem with it. If you, for purposes of this show and to just try and keep things level set, if we say like, look, it's the next version of .NET Core. It's just .NET 5.
Yeah,
right. That's what I said. .NET 5. Yeah.
Yeah. So hey, we're here to talk about real world use, right? Because we've seen the chat app. Like how many times?
I hate the chat app.
And Kevin, you've built some real apps with this.
Yeah, and we want to talk about some real world examples because it's the number one question I get whenever I do a SignalR talk is, all right, tell me some real world use cases for this technology. And it's the reason I hate the chat app, because no one writes chat apps for work. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, I was preaching that, and I have a client who paid me to write a chat app for one of their products, and I feel like they gave me the request. And I went, I have been training for this my whole life. This is my opportunity. So I've written a chat app in SignalR, and it works really well. But it's not the only use case. So I want to show one of the projects I'm most proud of, and it's very few client projects I'm allowed to talk about. Just because of client confidentiality stuff. But this one is public. It's actually a nonprofit I work with out of Ohio called the National Institute of Public Safety Technology. And it's a product called Livecat. And so assuming everyone can see my screen, right, Andy?
Yep, it's up on.
All right, cool.
And this is not a
so
slide,
Livecat,
right? This is live?
Yeah, this is live data. So what Livecat does is it's a 911 aggregation tool that's used by volunteer firehouses and emergency response teams in the Ohio area, or is like Southern Ohio area. And so folks who are not from the United States, 911 is our emergency services phone number. If you have an emergency, whether it's you, your house, or something else, you call 911, the appropriate people come take care of that problem. And depending on where in the United States you live, you might be served by a person paid by your city to come take care of that issue. So paid firefighters, paid emergency folks. But then a lot of the U.S. relies on volunteer services. So there's volunteer firefighters, volunteer EMTs, and they take shifts at different times. And because a good amount of the United States is rural, there's a case where you might have an emergency and you call 911, say, I'm having breathing problems. And the dispatcher in your city or county will call it in, but it might be more time, might be better just for timing for the county next door to respond to your call because maybe their emergency services are closer to you. If we drew a map of the United States, that would be the case where, all right, I'm near a border of two counties, so it's easier for another county to respond to me. So what Livecat does is it takes 911 data from all these different 911 agencies and it aggregates them. It just puts them into a big database and it says, all right, here's every incident that's occurring at any time. Here's the status of different resources. So ambulances, fire trucks, helicopters, you name it. That's all stored in our system. And then what we do is we create different views over that data. So a firehouse on the border of two counties might get data for their county, but also the county next door. So they have a good picture of what's happening. Because what could very well happen is there's an emergency one county over, but the firehouse can respond to it. So they'll see the notification come in and they'll start suiting up so they can go take care of that problem.
This is cool.
What
Kevin,
you're seeing here on my screen now.
Do we see some live events happening just now?
Yeah. It's updating all in real time.
Yeah, I mean, I just saw the big flashing red and it said dispatch. Now it says en route. So this is the real deal.
Yeah. So the best. So let's take a trip back to when I first got on this project. It wasn't using SignalR. So this was back in 2014, 2015. I don't quite remember, but I came onto it, and the way it was built on top of ASP.NET web forms, and a lot of this logic for things like colors and formatting was actually done on the database. So there's this huge stored procedure that would go through all the current incidents and resources, figure out how everything should look and feel, send it back to an ASP.NET web form, and that web form would get sent down to the browser. Well, that web form is inside of a update panel. If you don't know, the way an ASP.NET web form update panel worked was it would update on an interval, and it would send a request, an AJAX request basically, back to the server saying, I need the latest state of this page. The AJAX request would return, and it would take the HTML in that AJAX request and just replace it on the page. It actually worked really well, except the update panel for this app was set to every second. It would update once every second for all 600 people viewing the page. And that was at its low time. At its high time, it could be over 1,000 people. This poor little server was hosting IIS and SQL Server on the same box. And they said, Kevin, it's running at 100% CPU all the time. Like we don't want to bring more people in or more agencies because we don't think this box can handle it. And I went, I can fix this problem. So we rewrote it. It was still in .NET. .NET Core wasn't a thing yet. Rewrote it in .NET framework. It was 4 point whatever. And I brought SignalR in and said, okay, we're going to build a system that brings in the aggregations. It will figure out state changes, and it will send state changes down to the browser. We got what you see now. There's an emergency going on. Someone has abdominal pain, so hopefully they're okay. So we put it in production, and we started getting people on it. I saw the traffic coming in, but the CPU was sitting at 0%. I'm like, I don't think it's working because if it's at 0%, it's like obviously there's a problem, right? And turns out it was working fine. It was getting the requests. It was sending out the notifications. We just kept on-ramping people, and it was working great. So the story that I love, one of the guys I work with at the National Institute of Public Safety Technology, told me about, it was a firehouse, and guys were just sitting around doing what volunteer firefighters do during off time, and Livecat was up on a screen in the firehouse, and it started flashing red, like you probably have seen once or twice during this talk. And it was something like someone's having heart problems or chest pains, that sort of thing. And so folks are like, all right, let's suit up. They suit up, they get in the ambulance, the doors go up, they're out the door. And at that moment, when they're already out the door, the dispatcher comes over the intercom and says, hey, we have someone with chest pains. We need you to go now, this address. The team is already out the door going down the street because Livecat picked up the change before the dispatcher could announce it to the firehouse. And I mean, these folks are trained. Like they're in their suits in the truck out the door within 20, 30 seconds. I don't know. I'm not trained in that, but I do know, I've had parents that have had chest issues, heart attacks, that sort of thing. Seconds mean the difference between life or death. And I had written software that allowed emergency personnel to respond to someone in need faster than a dispatcher could respond to it. And so that just gave me a really feel-good feeling that, hey, I'm building software that's saving lives. So if you don't use SignalR for any other reason, it can save lives. And that's why I don't like chat apps, because chat apps do not save lives. And Livecat saved lives.
This is really great. So
I have an architectural overview if you want to see more, might get a little bit more geeky in the details.
Sure.
But yeah,
I'm
ask me questions.
Curious to know about the testing effort. I mean, this must be. I mean, how much of it? Let me just ask you this though: the application that you wrote, the data existed already, right? Like you're not collecting the data; you're just rendering out data to Livecat, right? The data exists already.
No. So let me show you the diagram. So I got a diagram right here. Let me load that up. All right. So I'm going to try to draw on this.
And you don't have to go too far because this is a SignalR conversation.
Well, I think the neat thing here is that previously, if there were, let's just pick a number, 1,000 connected clients to your web server, they were getting full ASP.NET Ajax panel, essentially a page refresh, basically. Every second. And that server was just hammered. Yep. And you reduced, you basically, what essentially happened, among other things, was like, forget sending down all that HTML and CSS and have to do all that rendering. Here's the data. Yeah. Over a quick connection that's already open.
Yep. Yeah. And even so, to go back to what I think Andy was trying to ask, the data, what happens is on the individual agencies, I have a little box here of agency A, agency B, C, D. We have about I forgot 15 to 20 different agencies that send us data. Now they're sending us data every second, between 1 to 10 seconds is the interval, because it's there we go. because it's emergency data, we have it set up where we check for that, or they send it to us every second. But if we don't see anything from them within 10 seconds, we tell them to send us an update anyway. So because we don't want to run into a use case where we miss an incident because of internet issues. All this data is still coming over the internet. So the rule of the internet is if it can go out, it probably will. So we have protections in the application for that. But all that data comes in, and we're getting lists of resources, and we're also getting lists of incidents that come down in all these different requests. And these come directly into an API that we built. It's running on ASP.NET Core. We have it in a load balance set, and we don't store any of that data in slow databases. So the current state of all these agencies is actually just stored in Redis. So because we have determined that we need to be able to retrieve that data instantly, and SQL is just a little too slow for our use cases. We actually had an instance of it much earlier on where we were trying to do all that data directly in memory. And what we learned was that worked extremely well. Wouldn't work in a load balance set. So as soon as we wanted to move to multiple servers, just for redundancy, it broke. So we brought Redis in, and Redis solved all of our problems. But these servers, they take these agency updates, and it keeps track of all of them. But then we have these configurations. So the screen you were just looking at, that's called a configuration. And a configuration basically says, I care about data from agencies A or C. So you can see my abbreviations here. I care about agency A or C. One might care about different zones. So if you have a county might have different zones inside of it. Another one might just care about might care about specific streets inside of a zone. So we have levels of filtering that we can do in an individual configuration. So we create all these configurations, and then anyone who pays for access to the site, or if they're a firehouse or emergency service, they get free access. They can basically go watch any of these configurations. So you have our users down here in the bottom, and I have them all color-coded, but they go through the same servers to load the current view. So if a user looking at config L and M, well, they connect, and this then puts them into what we call a SignalR group, and all the behind-the-scenes communication is done with SignalR groups. So when a request comes in from an agency, we'll process this change, and part of processing that change is we figure out, well, what's been added, what new events do we have, what's changed. So is there an update to an incident or an update to a resource? Or is there an incident that's been resolved and it needs to drop off the list? It's essentially a CRUD app, right? So we take these state changes, and then we go and we look in SQL. That's where we store all the information for the configurations. We'll go see, well, what configurations care about these changes? And that is a very small list. So we'll go to config AC and tell it, all right, you care about this change. Here's a change that's just happened. We'll go to config BGW. Here's a change that's happened that you need to care about. So the updates via SignalR are only happening to the configurations that need to care about it. We're not sending it down to everyone. We're sending it to only the folks that care. So our network traffic is basically, it only occurs when something's happening underneath the scenes.
Great. I'm really impressed with this. And the comments, there's some interesting comments in the chat where people are saying things like, we always say, we're glad our code isn't saving lives and stuff like that. And your code is potentially saving lives, which is really cool. but in some ways like a little scary. I think of some of the stuff I've written over the past and thought like, yeah, I don't know. So
it's not meant necessarily to be it's not the only notification device. What it's there is to be more just informational. The good number of the folks that use this site are not emergency personnel. They're like radio scanner people. Like back when I was a kid, my dad would always turn on the police scanner, and he would listen. Oh, house is on fire on the other side of town, and he wanted to keep up with that stuff. This is a digital version of that. A good number of the people that donate to the site are those who just want to see what's going on. So they'll find a configuration in there for their county or wherever they are, and they just sit here and they watch what's going on, or they'll have it up on a monitor in their office. So it's this line of saying it saves lives, but it is in firehouses across various counties and cities. So folks are watching it, and when they see the red flashing is another part of the configuration. So not all the configurations get that notification. And so this one I'm looking at, Mecklenburg, it's only specifically for this configuration. Now it might get updates for other areas, but it might not care about those. So we don't get the flash. The flash doesn't happen all the time. Ancient Code is asking, is it a PWA app? This one's not. This one is just an installed app in Edge, so I get rid of all the address bar.
I was wondering about that myself.
We haven't specifically taken the step yet to make it a PWA, but it wouldn't be very much effort to make it a PWA. I've pretty much set the foundation for it. We just haven't taken that step yet.
Kevin, right. In this, so you were saying earlier that you have this course that you're promoting, right? We're happy to help out with that, which is about SignalR.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Do you get into like actually building something like this? Like, I'm just curious. Like, do you actually use this as an example, or is that just unrelated?
I talk about this, and I'm actually working on a good way to talk about this particular example more in the weeds. Currently, what's on the site is just kind of an overview, like I gave you all. But I'm working on examples right now where I can get into more the architectural. How do we solve this problem from 100 feet, not 10,000 feet? Because it's all not that complicated. I give you all the bits and pieces in the course to build something like this, but I do understand it would be useful to see how would something like this get built. And I actually have to be careful because that's a part, I'm under client obligation, so I can't show the code, but I can talk around the concepts and the architecture, and of course I can show the real example.
Still, it's nice to know that the course you're learning from is actually made by someone with that real world experience. I mean, sometimes people you learn something, you make a course, you've done a couple things, but you've coming in with the real world experience is pretty cool, and it's nice to know that when you're taking a course and we're trying to learn something, you're learning from someone who's got the hands-on expertise.
Yeah. I have a question that goes back a little bit to when you were showing us how you've gone to multiple servers. So this particular app, you have more than one ASP.NET Core server running now?
Yep. We have usually between 2 or 3 at any time.
Okay. So I remember, and I don't want to dwell on it too much, I remember the backplane story in the .NET Framework SignalR. What are you using, or do you have to keep these in sync?
Yeah.
I think you do, but I'd like to hear about it.
No, you do.
Okay.
So the problem is still the same. So when you're scaling, and any web application worth their salt nowadays should be on at least 2 servers at any time, just for redundancy. You run into this problem. Actually, I have slides. It's amazing. It's like I just built a course on this. So I have
well, I really am curious how you're solving it, and then to see if that ends up being, the service that the team built. Well, let's see. I want to see.
All right. So here's the general problem with scaling, and I'm not going to do it as much justice as I do in the course. But let's imagine you have various clients. We'll just say A through F, and they're all connecting to. Oh, I'm not focused. They're all connecting to your web server. And this is how it works in development all the time. You're connecting to your local server. You're doing all your work. And when you're testing in some sort of dev environment, you're usually connecting to just one server. Well, client A sends a message up to the server saying, hey, something happened. And the server goes, okay, I need to notify everyone that a message, I need to notify them a message. Something's happened. I need to go notify everyone about it. Well, when this happens on a single server, that message gets sent to everyone because it's all clients. And SignalR is managing all those connections for you on your behalf. Okay, that works. What happens when you add another server to the mix or multiple servers? So server clients A, B, and C connect to server A, and then D, E, and F connect to server B. All right, well, let's walk through that same scenario again. Client A sends a message up to the server. The server says, oh, I need to go notify all clients that something has happened. And it will. It will notify all clients connected to that server. What about D, E, and F? Well, they're not connected to the server that's sending the message. So they don't get the message at all. It just sits there and does nothing. How do we solve that problem? Well, that's done through a mechanism called a backplane. So we still have clients A, B, and C connecting to server A, D, E, and F connecting to server B. But then the two servers, or however many servers you have in your load balance set, connect to this thing called a backplane. We'll talk about what the backplane physically is in a moment. But the servers connect to the backplane. And now when client A sends the message up to the server, and the server says, all right, send it to all connected clients. It's going to send it to all the clients on its server that it knows about, that it's connected to. But at the same time, it's going to add this message to the backplane. And the backplane is going to notify every other server that something's happened. And those servers will ensure that all their clients get the message as well. So it's this really cool way to keep all your servers and all your clients in sync without having to get too much in the weeds. There's 2 approved ways to do this on SignalR now. There used to be more, but there's only 2. The big one, so it depends. Do you want to use Azure or do you not want to use Azure?
Right.
If you don't want to use Azure, you use Redis cache as your backplane, which I do for one of my clients because, actually, I'll come back to that in a second. We use Redis cache. Redis cache is fantastic because Redis cache is fast and it can keep all these different servers in sync without any issues. The alternative is the Azure SignalR service. So it means you have to use Azure, but it's a service kind of built from the ground up to serve as not only a backplane, but it also solves another problem with having a lot of clients connecting to your app, and that's just connection pooling, or not connection pooling, but connection exhaustion. Because not only are you, the typical web server, you're opening up connections to pull down HTML, JavaScript, CSS, all that stuff. But those connections open and close. And if you have more connections coming in than the server can handle, they get backlogged. And then they get handled in the order that they're received. But usually they're handled in an appropriate amount of time. When you open a WebSocket, that connection doesn't close. But it's still on the same mechanism as every other HTTP request coming into the server. And it turns out that's as you open more and more and more connections, you're basically holding resources that the server could use to do other things. So what the Azure SignalR service does, actually, let me take a step back. I have learned this the hard way. I had a server that for one of my clients, we're using SignalR, and we had 5 hubs. So a hub, I know we're getting into details now. So a hub in SignalR is basically a connection point. So think of it the same way as like an MVC controller. ASP.NET MVC controller, it's a central place you go to handle the user hub, or the profile hub, or the inventory hub. You have these special hubs just for very specific purposes. In old SignalR, one WebSocket was used for every hub, and that was awesome, except they changed it. When SignalR for ASP.NET Core dropped, they made it where every hub got its own WebSocket. So my poor app, I didn't think of anything of it. And I did the upgrade and got everything in production. I had 5 hubs. And so for every one user connected to my site, and not even that, for every one tab open to my site, I had 5 connections instead of the 1. So I more than doubled my connection count. Well, one person could have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tabs open with 5 connections each. And then we had close to 1,000 users hitting the site. And all of a sudden, during our busy time, and our busy time was from like 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern time, I was crashing the site. And I didn't realize why. And we were running in the Azure App Service, and we had 2 nodes running. It's like, well, this should be working fine. Getting out into the weeds, the app service found out I was exhausting my connections. There were just not enough physical connections open to the server. And when that happens, the server crashes and it restarts itself. And a couple seconds later, it crashes itself again. And the solution was I had to beef up my app service plan, and I had to create more nodes so I could handle all these requests. And then you have to go solve the real problem of reducing the hub count. So I went back and I started consolidating hubs, which I didn't want to do, but I had to because I had too many connections open to my server. The big thing that Azure SignalR service solves is that it takes the connections off of your server. So all your SignalR connections go to Azure, and then Azure will proxy request to your server. Mm-hmm. So I don't have a slide for that yet because I'm actually working on that video for the course right now.
Right.
But in my use case, it would have taken all 5 of my connections, sent them to Azure instead, and my server wouldn't care. All it has is one connection back to the Azure SignalR service to worry about all these calls. So that's what we use on Livecat. We use Azure SignalR service here, and because we don't have a connection problem. This was designed with one hub in mind, so and we don't get near the traffic to warrant having a connection exhaustion. The other thing you have to worry about with Azure SignalR service is that once you go over 1,000 connections, you have to. It's called bumping units. So you go from basically 1 VM to 2 VMs to handle more connections, and it doubles the price.
Yeah, right.
And so my earlier example where I was exhausting connections, I'm like, oh, let me try Azure SignalR service because this is a new thing. It would have cost $600 a month to run that service.
Yeah. And
that was a no. It just couldn't, because their billing isn't hourly like a lot of services. As soon as you bump your units up, you're charged for the day. It's like SQL Server pricing. So if you bump it for the day, you're charged for the day.
Yeah.
You can't bump it down later, and it goes against everything the cloud.
Like a busy day is a busy day in Azure SignalR service. It's not by the second billing.
The only days I wouldn't need that supply is on the weekends, and by then it's not even worth it. they would still have been charged $500-600 for this service. And I said it's not cost effective. So I was better off adding more servers to my app service and solving the problem, because that doesn't double the price. It just adds a couple more dollars per month. And so it was a very stressful time in my career trying to solve that.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
You know,
you're trying to solve the real problem, right?
I got to say, Chris, that, I've been to a lot of SignalR talks, right? We've had talks of, on our show, and I've attended them at various events and things like that. We said you were going to talk about real life scenarios, real world stuff. And I tell you what, this is fascinating to me, because in all the talks I've been to, I've never heard people talk about these kind of real world cases that you need to be aware of, these types of scenarios, these pain points that you're addressing. Doesn't come up in the chat app demo that you usually get.
No.
And I got to tell you, I'm really enjoying this conversation. I feel like I'm learning a lot beyond the things I've learned in the past about the basic, features and the basic workings of SignalR. And you're bringing up, but here's the things you got to look out for. Here are the gotchas that can come in. Here's how we've solved it in some cases, and it's really interesting. This is fun.
Yeah.
There's a lot to it. But SignalR service works really well. We're using it here. You also pay per message, but that's a minor charge in the grand scheme of things. The big thing you're paying for is connections, and offloading the connections off of your server versus someone else's server.
Goes again. I shouldn't. I guess that's not a good thing when it's doing this, but
no, it's flashing red. That's bad.
Yeah, but it's
also late.
I mean, it's real.
It's real. Yeah. There's a question from Contrived X. How do you determine the problem? How did you determine the problem was too many hubs and connections?
Oh my gosh, that is a fantastic question. The Azure diagnostic tools they've leaps and bounds better today than they used to be. So back then it would crash, and all it would tell you is your application crashed, and you would go look at the logs, and you would go, they just stopped. It's like it was receiving a request, and then it stopped receiving a request, and then it was on a whim. I was on one part of the app service advisor, the little health advisor thing that they have, and it flashed a little warning, and it said connection exhaustion. I'm like, I've never seen that before. Let me learn more about that. Like, I knew that there was a theoretical limit to the number of connections that a web server can handle, because I've been in web servers for 15 years. But I'm like, there's no way I could be exhausting my connection pool on a server. And then I started jumping into the math. I'm like, oh, hold up. Yeah, no, this kind of makes sense. So I did an experiment. I had two hubs that were really easy to consolidate, and I consolidated them. Actually, that was after I just calmed the fire by raising the number of app services just to get more resources in there. When in doubt, just raise the CPU and RAM, and you're usually good. So,
at least it's easy.
And because it's Azure, it only costs like $3, right? And you can go back and fix the problem.
Yeah. Right.
So I went back and I consolidated two of my hubs. So I went from 5 down to 4 basically overnight. And the next day I sat down and watched it, and I didn't have the problem. And I was watching. I found a counter, and it was telling me the number of connections. Like, you could see it. It would just go up, 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 up. It would plateau or peak, and then crash, and it would start doing it all over again. So that was a problem. And what else did I do? I turned on something in Cloudflare. So we use Cloudflare as our DNS. So I basically turned on under attack mode. And I didn't think we were really under attack, but I needed Cloudflare basically be zealous about every connection coming in, and that actually helped pull back a lot of the requests because they weren't connecting at the same time. So it made the server a little bit more stable than normal. But yeah, it took me like 2 weeks to fully solve and fix that problem, which clients weren't happy, but they're happy now. Like that site has not crashed in, knock on wood, at least a year. Like it's been pretty rock solid.
Yeah.
What's the right amount of CPU and RAM? More. Exactly.
And if that
you can
fails,
never have too
even
much CPU
more,
and RAM.
right?
Like, what do you got,
Right.
Azure?
We'll take it.
So let me ask, and of course this is a gut reaction. Not going to hold you to it.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to make you sign in blood, Kevin, but considering the load that you're getting for this site, what do you think of the resources you're consuming? A lot, a little?
This one's barely consuming anything. I don't remember what I'm running. I'm running I think I'm running a 4 CPU app service on this. I don't remember what the Azure code for it is. It's not high end. It's not low end. It's
maybe
less
standard,
than $200 a month for this service.
Okay.
Yeah, less than 200. So,
okay.
and even to the point where I think I could even scale it back more. But we kind of leave it where it is just because we're comfortable there.
Yeah.
Like it's their server costs are covered. We're not doing anything major. So
that's for the app service. Where's Redis living? The backplane?
Oh, Redis is Azure Redis Cache.
Okay.
Like
okay.
$5 for that. Yeah.
And so that service way more economical. I mean, look, the Azure SignalR service is great and it's enterprise ready. But what I'm learning from you here is you can get by with the Azure Redis Cache service, and it'll get you a long way.
Yeah. I would even say there are only certain use cases where I would think about pulling in the SignalR service.
Okay.
And that's probably if I have just lots of money to burn and I don't want the resources on my server. Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest reason is if you just don't want the connections on your server, put them on Azure SignalR service.
Okay.
So there's also, I mean, yeah, there's a big asterisk by that statement. There's also a lot of use cases with Azure SignalR service and Azure Functions. So using SignalR outside the context of an ASP.NET Core site, where you might not have a central server running anywhere, but you still want to take advantage of SignalR for real-time updates. There's a lot of like unique use cases. It's actually one of the things I'm trying to dive into more in the course because I have not done a ton with Azure Functions and SignalR, but there's a lot of possibilities there where you're not even hosting a server. You're just using Azure Functions, but you can still get that real-time feedback to clients. Then that's where Azure SignalR, I think, really works well. So if you're just hosting an ASP.NET Core site, yeah, you don't need Azure SignalR service at all.
Okay.
Chris, one of the things I was thinking, Bitmaster says the audio and video is really out of sync. I did not know that. Chris, what I was going to say is sort of on a side note here. I don't know much about Redis Cache or Azure Redis Cache that way. And that sounds like a good show topic. Seriously. And I don't know, maybe we could have Kevin come back again and talk about it.
No, I'll get Guy Rozzi.
Okay, yeah, sure.
I will introduce you if you don't know Guy.
Yeah, we know Guy, I think.
Yep.
So, yeah. I think that'd be a fun topic because it's something that I'm just not.
Or Guy Royce. I'm sorry, I said his name wrong.
Yeah. I thought it was Royce, but I didn't want to correct you because, yeah.
No, correct me. I'm usually wrong.
Okay, and also, I'm sorry to say that Bitmaster is saying that it is your audio and video only. There's something messed up with Skype or something like that. I think that's.
Well, yeah.
Well.
So when we're talking about Redis here, we're going back to that concept of the backplane, which is some data that's keeping these. It's allowing SignalR to keep things in sync, where maybe some requests are coming into this server, and then wait a second, in SignalR you say I want to broadcast to everybody, but that's happening on one of your servers. So this backplane's got to basically say, hold on, let me go let the other one know.
Yep.
Or 3 or 4 or whatever. So as far as the cameras go, is that Andy's filters on us? Because which is fine. I'm not, it doesn't bother me too much. It's just that when I've a couple times now I've looked over at my output to be like, I'm in color, right? My white balance isn't that messed up. And that's just you messing around, right, Andy, or no?
No, I wish that was the case.
There might be something. You had to set up on the fly pretty quick tonight, so who knows?
Yeah.
What's going on?
The fact that we've got this show running, and I think we're getting really good content. If the audio and video are a little messed up, it's unfortunate. But we're kind of lucky we got anything running tonight at all. The way we were having some technical problems. So sorry for people that are watching that are sort of struggling through that. But we've had a pretty good audience throughout this show, and so I think people are hanging with us, and we appreciate that. We love our audience. Yeah. We love the participation, and Ancient Coder. We'd rather have it out of sync and looking kind of grainy than nothing at all. So we love our audience, and so if you're watching this and you're not a follower or a subscriber, please follow us, subscribe, depending on whatever platform you're on, right? And whether you're on,
if you're watching on Twitch, hit the follow button. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, right?
Yeah.
And then definitely the SignalR Mastery course there. Yeah. I'm assuming, I've got the course up here. I'm not sharing my screen right now, but I will.
You can if you want.
I've got it. I should have had that going already, but I didn't. So,
Well, if you shared, I would have lost his share, so you can't really have it going already. But
I guess that's true, huh?
Hold up, I got a browser here somewhere.
Yeah, go ahead. And then the other thing I wanted to add, while you're bringing that up, is that we have one of your talks from Code Camp up. Philly.net Code Camp was last weekend.
Yeah,
and
I didn't talk about SignalR.
Yeah, we don't have the SignalR one. Did you do a SignalR talk?
Not Philly. No, I didn't have one prepared. I was in the middle of writing the course. I'm like, let me submit something to Philly. So I used an old favorite.
While you were talking here, I double checked to see what's up, because there were some 50 sessions. For the first time ever, every Philly.net Code Camp session was recorded. And why is that? Because it had to be 100% virtual.
Yep.
So in some respects, doing a live conference makes it harder to record absolutely everything, because you need physical equipment everywhere. So that's kind of a cool thing. And we'll take a look at that in a little bit, because I know it's, obviously we're a friend of the Philly.net user group here on the Dev Talk Show. And there's about half of the talks are up, and it's an all volunteer effort to get them up there. They'll all be up soon, but 2 of them that are up are the Rich Campbell talks on the history of .NET, which have already, the YouTube algorithm has already snaked out, and people are finding, because, hey, Richard Campbell, .NET history, of course, people are gonna find them. And your talk is up, Kevin, on I think it's background services with Logic Apps. So definitely check those out. But I want to talk about SignalR Mastery, which is available now on Udemy.
Yeah. So this is a course. I've been teaching SignalR for a long time, and I have a very structured way of teaching it, at least the way I think it should be taught. The general issue I have with SignalR content is I call it, I'm trying to teach you the letter X, okay? But they teach the letter X in the context of the word supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. There's a letter X in there.
Yeah.
But you have to get through supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. So like chat apps. Like, here, let me show you the chat apps. Ignore the entire Vue or React app I built, or Blazor. Like Let me get around all this corrupted with identity. Oh, look at all this cool stuff that I've added. Here's the one line of SignalR that you need to care about. I hate that. That's not how I want to teach things, because my expectation is you're coming in to learn SignalR. You're not coming in to learn everything else. So I've broken up basically learning SignalR into what I call essentials and then advanced topics. And the essentials are basically a lot of what we talked about stuff here. It's like, okay, well, how do you connect? What's a basic SignalR application look like, a client server? Then we talk about, well, how does SignalR connect to a server? How do I control how SignalR connects to the server? How do I create a hub? What are the various ways to create hub methods? Because there are more than one. How do I create a client event that the server can send messages to? How do I create all these discussions? What are clients? Like what are the different ways that SignalR can send messages to a variety of clients? And we go through this, just a step-by-step detail of how SignalR works. And these are short videos. So if you look at the times, my longest video here is, what, 10 minutes? Oh, let's talk about reconnection. So we walk through the various ways that you can set up reconnection techniques on a server. And then I'm working actually right now through advanced techniques or advanced topics. So once you've figured out the basics, you want to get into more of the performance side of SignalR. How do you improve your applications? How do you do things like backplane? So I had these slides ready for backplanes because I just recorded those videos last week.
You're still adding content to this. This isn't just a one-time, you get what's here. You get the whole course.
Yeah, I'm vested in this course. So I have a list of topics I'm working on. So those you can actually go look at coming soon. So I'm telling you, all right, well, I'm going to record. I was working on this one today, working with ASP.NET hosted services. So if you have a hosted service doing some background tasks and you need to notify people of state changes, how do you do that? I'm getting ready to record a whole bunch of stuff of how you can self-host SignalR outside of an ASP.NET Core app. How do you work with various clients? So I'll set up a .NET client that's not a web app. So it'll just be like a console app that can receive messages. So yeah, and I'm also looking for feedback from folks in the community. So if there's someone out there with a question, and it's a good question, I want to create that as a topic in the course, because those questions are probably questions other folks are having as well. So if you get in the course today, you just get all those updates. And this is my first self-published course. I'm not behind the walled garden of one of the many subscription services out there, because I've published a lot of courses behind walled gardens, and I've never felt a connection with anyone taking the course. I've gotten my check, but I've never felt like those were beneficial for anyone. This one, I have a lot more direct feedback with the people taking the course, and I'm vested in this for the long run, even though it's at a fraction of the price of what any of these subscription services would be. So yeah, if you're into SignalR or learning something about it, this is the best resource currently for any of that information, because no one's talking about SignalR at this scale. It's always like, oh, let's add SignalR as a thing on top of something else that we're trying to teach. And I think there's a benefit to learning just SignalR.
The deep dive, and I got to tell you, quite frankly, at $12, which is the discount price right now, yeah, that's like a why not price. Like for $12, like you know what I mean? Like,
hey, if I can get 5,000 people to say why not,
yeah, 5,000 people say why not. Well, we have 5,000 people watching the show tonight, of course. Woo! And we wish. But yeah, I mean, this is pretty good. This is interesting. Even at the full price of $20, it's not a big thing either. Especially if your company is paying for it. I wouldn't have a hard time approving it for people on my team at $20.
Yeah. I'm also adding a lot of these just end-to-end demos. So I'm taking concepts for demos I have, and I'm starting from file new, and I'm building out the entire application because there's two sides to the equation. You want to learn how everything works, but now let's put it in the context of something else. So basically, what I was trying to avoid before, there is a benefit to learning that, but let's start with S, and let's build out supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, one step at a time. So over the course of, it was 2 Twitch streams on my Twitch channel, I built out this to-do application. And the goal was it needed to implement SignalR, some basic facets of it. And we walked through until we had the end product. It's not pretty. It's an ugly UI, but it's a functional UI. And I made mistakes. I made a bunch of mistakes. But I think that's part of the benefit of watching someone go through the process. It's like, oh, I missed this step. Here's what I missed. This is why it's important. So that entire demo is uncut. And I have at least 2 more planned to do over the next couple weeks, where I'm going to do the same thing. And they're going to be a little bit more complicated demos. And I want to pull some of the concepts from earlier in the course into those demos so people get a more well-rounded view of SignalR.
So I just see that it looks like Chris posted. I was going to say we could share Kevin's Twitch channel. Your Twitch channel, I've been on your stream a few times. Like as a viewer. I mean, like hanging out. Are you focusing on SignalR only these days on the channel, or are you doing all kinds of different stuff?
No, I try to do all kinds of different things. I stay in basically the Microsoft stack. So I have all kinds of dumb little projects I'm working on, and the Twitch stream is a good opportunity to do that. I've dedicated Thursdays to SignalR. Those are basically SignalR Mastery office hours. So if you have questions about the course, that's actually the perfect place to go, is when I'm live, ask your questions. And if I need to, I'll just file new up a project and we'll try something out.
So that's tomorrow if you're watching live. Yep. And when are those office hours?
I'll kick it off at 1 p.m. Eastern time.
1 p.m. Eastern.
Wow, that's
tomorrow. SignalR office hours. That's a cool idea.
Wait, how many days?
And then those are all saved to YouTube for later.
If you say you're like, on my stream, and I dedicate Thursdays to SignalR. So how many days a week are you streaming now?
Really is 1 or 2.
Oh, okay.
The office hours are actually the only thing I have on a schedule. Everything else is dependent on, the course. I took a lot of time off streaming just to get the course ready for a launch, and other client load, because my day job is consulting. So I'm in consulting work all day, every day, and then I do the streaming and the coursework on the side. So everything in here is a lesson learned from real consulting work.
Wow. I love the fact that, really it shows that, you say you're vested in this, and I can hear it in your voice, the way you talk about this course, the way you talk about trying to get feedback from people and getting, questions. And this whole concept of adding the office hours on top is really cool. I mean, you're buying into Kevin as the expert who's really there for me. And I can appreciate that as a consumer. That's cool.
And so much of that is just from, like, you guys, I've been in the community for what seems like ever. And that's the crowd that I enjoy working with and trying to help. And I get that satisfaction from helping the community. This is just an extension of that, especially since I can't see any of you all in person.
Well, hopefully we'll have you back at Tech Bash. We are still planning Tech Bash for October.
The first day of Tech Bash is my birthday, by the way. So,
well, perfect, right?
But we have to figure out the kids' policy.
Well, your kid was there the whole time last time. He won prizes.
He was, but
he won the grand prize, didn't he? A drone?
He did. He won a drone. He still loves that drone. And he actually asked me a couple months ago He's like, hey, when are we going back to the water park? I'm like, where I won the drone. I'm like, well, it got canceled because of COVID.
Yeah, last year,
yeah.
So wear your mask, get the vaccine when you can. Maybe we can all splash around together at Tech Bash this year.
Yeah, we're sure hoping that we have that great event this year, but I don't know. Chris, what else?
Thank you. I love that Dapper Talk.
Oh yeah. You contrived to say
watching the chat. Yeah,
Dapper Talk. Yeah. All Kevin's presentations are great. I mean, he brings a lot of passion to this stuff. That's why he's our first 2-time guest and longtime friend of the show, as we like to say, right, Chris?
Absolutely.
Yep. It was a lot of fun. And it was a lot like that conference, as the Real Japan is saying there. I think that Tech Bash that comparison is pretty apt, right? I mean, both of the Kalahari for one thing. So
yeah, I mean, to be clear, I mean, we wish we could be that conference, right? Like,
sure.
Those guys, that conference and what's it called?
Code Mash.
Code Mash. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked to those guys when we were planning Tech Bash, and we said, hey, we'd like to do one of these Kalahari type events, and Code Mash in particular, they were really helpful and generous to us, and helping us with some ideas and some concepts, and helping us get started. I'm glad. Thank you, Real Japan, that it reminds you of that conference. That's certainly a compliment to us, and that's a great event that they run. And
Kalahari is such a great venue, and it's having now done several Kalaharis and one Great Wolf. Kalahari is like bar none better.
We like it there
every way.
It's kind of easy to run a conference there. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
I mean, the place is great, and my Real Japan says it's a win-win for everybody because the family likes it. Mine too. My kids like going there, and I know Chris, his daughter.
Yeah, my daughter asks, "Are we going to go back to that conference?" Right?
Yeah.
Well, I don't mean you know what I mean. Are we going to go back to Tech Bash? And because she has actually enjoyed the Kids Fridays.
Yeah.
Last year there was whenever it was now, 2019, there was this fantastic machine learning thing for the kids, and the kids were. Well, the funny thing about it is, I came away from it when she described to me what happened, where they said they basically trained machine learning to recognize dogs and cats, and then the kids got creative and they started like drawing dogs on paper, and it still got it. And then Sam went and got, like, because she loves dog stuffed animals, she went and got one of hers, and the machine's like, yeah, that's a dog. And I thought, wow, I'm pretty impressed. I kind of want to go see that. Oh, I missed it. I was out doing the adult things. I wish I would have been at the kids one. So there's a lot of cool stuff there. Yeah. But yeah, Kevin, this was great. I'm really glad we got to talk about a real world app, plus the tech choices you made behind it, because that gets left out. And forget SignalR, that gets left out all the time in anything. So
it was so scary. Like, I worked in Azure I worked with Azure Beta when it was announced at PDC in 2009. And I've grown up. I remember doing an Azure course. Like, I wrote an Azure course that covered all of Azure, because Azure only did like 3 things. It was virtual machines, it was storage, and it was service bus. But today you can't do that because there's just too much in Azure. And I sit in these architectural reviews with like Azure architects, and it's like, oh, this Azure service talks to that Azure service, and this Azure service, and you sit back and go, I feel like we have made this way more complicated than it necessarily needs to be, that we're using services for the sake of using services. And you always want to ask the question, well, how did you come to the conclusion that you need X, Y, and Z, and B, and Q, and Lambda, and connect all the dots?
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to talk about, well, I use this service for this very specific reason, and if I didn't use that service, I would use this other thing, and give alternatives to all your solutions, because we complicate it.
Yeah. And this is the kind of talk we would have around the breakfast table at a conference, in the hallway, maybe in the parking lot after a user group. And so here we are with meeting the mission statement of the Dev Talk Show, having the hallway conversation right here live with all of you. And I especially want to thank everybody who watched us live today. We had another great turnout for our show. I think, Andy, it's fair to say we're going to love looking at the analytics later. And streamers are pretty jealous of shows like ours. Kevin's as well. Is that, game streams are obviously the big thing. But what happens in programming streams is you see the crowd engagement form and then they just stay with you.
Yeah.
Because, it's a learning opportunity for everybody. And whereas, a lot of other types of content streams are in and out, in and out. And you kind of see like it builds and you get to that peak and then you just stay there till the show's over. So thank all of you for watching us live, whether it's on Twitch or YouTube. I know we all really appreciate it. And, if you head over to youtube.com/the Dev Talk Show right after this is over, this show's processing and it'll be ready to review if you came in a little late or you just want to check it out another time, plus all of our other previous content. So any last words here? I think this was just fantastic, and it really I think we came up with a lot of good ideas to talk about after this too. So thank you very much to our guest Kevin, and please go check out his course. We saw his Twitch stream up there. Here's a real expert in the community that's got real world experience. So we appreciate your time here, Kevin.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys letting me come on and chat with everyone, and I hope you all pick up the course. And if you pick it up, give me 5 stars. And if you secretly hate it, still give me 5 stars, but feel free to send me a message, elsewhere and say, here's some ways you can improve. I just want to help everyone succeed. So I also think this is a really good way if you just like what we're doing out in the community, to support it. Like, this is my OnlyFans. Very geeky, technical OnlyFans. So, and cheaper probably too.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is what I do to try to, help you all, and a good way for you all to help support the work that I do. So I appreciate it.
All right, Andy, what do you think?
I said it before. I enjoyed this. I learned a lot of, the extra stuff, the thought process that goes on behind this, using SignalR. Always fun to hang out with Kevin. He's an old friend. Gosh, I know, I know you guys a long time now. I can't even think about how long, but it's just fun. So, and I feel like our audience is becoming part of that. Some of the people in the audience we know for a while. Some of you guys on the audience are newer, but are regularly joining this show. And I feel like, we're hanging out and we're having a good time, and that's what we need these days. And so I don't know. I like doing this show. I've said it before. I like doing this show. It's great. So I guess it's time to wrap it up, though.
Yeah. We had a good show. So again, thanking everybody for joining us live. Thanking our special guest Kevin Griffin, and be sure to check him out. And Andy for pulling together the producer role when we had a little trouble. Really appreciate it. So everybody, we're looking for another week. Catch us on the meetup and on Twitter, and we'll get the topic out to you. And we can't wait to see you next time on the Dev Talk Show.